So good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Long. A couple years ago, I did a presentation on Wi-Fi authentication for PSK and EAP. So I got some good feedback on that. So this year I want to come back and finish it off with EAP TLS. Apologize, there is going to be some redundancy. Obviously, I believe I'm the fourth presentation on EAP TLS, but we are going to be doing some live demonstrations today, so hopefully there'll be some different things you get out of this one. So before I start, the references I used for this presentation, of course, the RFCs, so RFC 5246 for TLS 1.2 and 8446, which is now the new EAP TLS 1.3. Additionally, last year, or maybe 2 years ago now, I came across this amazing book called Bulletproof SSL and TLS by Ivan Rishtik. I hope I said his name correctly. But this book was extremely helpful in really trying to dial down and understand all the intricacies of TLS in general. It's more geared toward web applications, but it's still EAP and it still applies to us. Okay, so what is the goal for today? So if you have a favorite packet capture tool or you have Adrian's tool, you can, with one button, get ready to go. I'm putting up here my AP and my client MAC addresses so you guys can go ahead and capture. I am on channel 60. I know a lot of you got some really cool new toys this week. So I would greatly appreciate that if you do not attack me. If you do, I guess we will be capturing you attacking me. All right. The other part of this presentation, I think these are some of the tactics I used when I was studying for my CWAP and my SP credentials. And going through those and looking at the overviews of those two courses, you can really see some overlap. Between the two, the theory behind all of the handshakes in the SP, and then getting down into the packets with AP. So I kind of incorporated what I like to call study overlap as preparing for the CWNE, and the tactics I used for this presentation was what I used when I was studying. Okay, so I'm going to breeze through some of this stuff here because you've already seen it 3 times. So authentication, the process of verifying users and their credentials. For this presentation, we're going to specifically talk about EAP TLS, and as was stated 3 times before me, it utilizes certificates on both the server and the client. You have 3 components: the supplicant, authenticator, and authentication server. Your supplicant is your friendly neighborhood Wi-Fi client that is going to be authenticating to the network. Your authenticator, I've heard different things, your bouncer or your secret agent or what have you. Basically, that is there to only pass the traffic for authentication. Once a successful authentication has occurred, then data can then pass across the network. Then, of course, you have your authentication server, which is responsible for authenticating the user. For any of you who have set this up, as you know, there's a trust relationship between the authenticator and the authentication server because when you configure this, you have a shared secret that you configure in the authenticator and a shared secret in the authentication server. For today's demonstrations, I'm going to use one of the company's devices I work with, a medical device. Yes, EAP TLS medical device, 5 gigahertz, and a Uni 2 channel. So we're going to be demonstrating with this as the supplicant. The authenticator is going to be this trusty little Aruba AP that I was fortunate to get at an earlier WLPC, and I am running a free radius virtual machine on my laptop to be able to act as the authentication server. All right, so why are we doing this authentication? Well, one of the biggest things that's important here as well is at the end of the EAP authentication, you're going to get the keying material to feed into the MSK or master session key, which then is the catalyst to feed down all the other keys here. Again, you've heard this a couple times this week. I'm not going to repeat it. TLS Cipher Suites. So this was something that the Bulletproof TLS book did really, really well, because I was always getting confused where, you got this long acronym and what's what and how does this all work together? So hopefully this will break it. I can break this down and make it simple for you. So the first part of this is what's called the key exchange. Again, the purpose of EAP is to ultimately end up with a master secret to pass down as the MSK and complete the rest of the encryption keys. The key exchange starts out to generate a pre-master secret, which then starts off the communications between the client and the server. Next, you have authentication. So now you have client authentication with the server, which is using asymmetric encryption, okay? Or it's using two keys, a public and a private key. Next, you have the encryption of the data and what cipher suite is going to be used, or what encryption cipher is going to be used. So you have the type of encryption, the strength of the encryption, and then the mode of the encryption. You're going to start to see out there now GCM. Has anyone seen this or know what this is? So GCM stands for Galloy Counter Mode, and this is an authenticated encryption, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then lastly, you have the message authentication code, which is there for data integrity. Okay, so the four parts. TLS key exchanges. There's a lot of different key exchanges out there. These are the most common ones. RSA, DHE, ECDHE. I'll say ephemeral once. So that's just a fancy way of saying that each TLS connection will have a unique key. So with RSA, actually, that is a function of what is called forward secrecy. So what forward secrecy means is that with each individual TLS connection, you have a unique set of keys that's used for that session. RSA keys do not support forward secrecy. However, DHE and ECDHE do, and the EC part of the DHE is the elliptical curve. Okay? So again, you've got RSA for key exchange, DHE and ECDHE. So which one do you choose? Well, you know you want to support forward secrecy because you want to increase the security of what you're working with. So that leaves two of them, the DHE or ECDHE. Fortunately, the author of the Bulletproof TLS book did a great test where he tested 1,000 connections using the various different key exchanges algorithms to see how they performed. So the one in the middle there is the DHE, and you can see that that definitely takes a lot more processing power. So what you got here is you have a graph where the green is the client CPU time and the blue is the server CPU time. So you can see with DHE, that one gets ruled out because of performance. You don't want to use RSA below because it doesn't support forward secrecy, so that leaves you with the top two, which is the ECDHE using ECDSA keys or RSA keys for authentication. All right. Authentication, so we just talked about that. You have RSA and ECDSA. Now, this is where I always get confused. I would see RSA as a key exchange and then RSA for authentication, and then what's this all about? So RSA can be used for key exchange, but it can also be used for authentication, where the client has a public-private key that's using RSA, and the server has a public-private key using RSA. Next, you have the ECDSA. So when you're looking at this, again, what are you looking at to use? An ECDSA key at 256 bits, that is equivalent to 3072 bits for RSA. So as you can imagine, there's a lot more, more smaller keys, better performance. Okay. With encryption, you're going to see stream encryption, block encryption, and authenticated encryption. Moving forward, the recommendations are going to be to use the authenticated encryption, which is the GCM modes, and that's basically doing both encryption and integrity validation within the same process. In the book as well, there's Encryption Performance, and you can see very quickly, I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see very quickly at the bottom there, the GCM Cipher Suites for encryption were the best performers, and you don't get too much of a difference between using 256 or 128 bits. So then you're basically looking at client support. So with that, you have your TLS Cipher Suites. You know you've got your key exchange, authentication, encryption, message authentication codes, and this is one of the ones that looking for use as we move forward. One of the biggest things to take into consideration, two major things. One is client support, of course, right, with everything. So ensuring that the clients do support the types of Cipher Suites that you're looking to implement. Another important thing is that per the standards, TLS states that the server is going to make the decision on which Cipher Suite is used. And I'm going to demonstrate that here in a little bit. So you can go ahead and set up strong Cipher Suites and prioritize them in the front, and then put weaker ones at the back if you have to support legacy clients. But you also have to be very careful to ensure that you're not trimming it so much where you're not supporting clients if it's something that's mandatory that has to be on the network. All right, the handshake. So in our world, it always starts with identity request, identity response. Then it's going to kick off the TLS handshake. So you got the client hello. Most important thing about the client hello is it's going to state the Cipher Suites that it supports. So I'll demonstrate this in a little bit. You'll be able to see how many and what the different types of Cipher Suites a client can support. Server hello comes back. It says, hey, we're going to be using this Cipher Suite to communicate. I'm going to send you my certificate, I'm going to do a key exchange, and I'm going to request your certificate next. And that's it, I'm done. Client comes back with certificate, client key exchange, and then client or certificate verify. So this is extremely important because the certificate verify indicates that the client is in possession of the private key that for the public certificate that the client is using. Then it changes cipher spec, goes back and forth, and you finish and start the four-way handshake. So my presentation of that was definitely not as good, so you got to refer back to Eddie. So in your server hello, it's the yo, I'm legit stage, and then ultimately you make it all the way through. All right, so enough of that stuff. Let's look at some real stuff. All right, so hopefully we got some connections here, and we do. So if you got your capture tools ready, this guy is connected. So I'm going to disassociate this guy, and then I'm going to go ahead and start it back up so we can do a live capture. And while this is doing that, come on. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger so everyone can see. You know, it does help to press start on the packet capture to collect a packet capture. All right, that's a little bit better. All right, can you guys see that? All right, I'm going to consider that a yes. So here we go. We've got identity request, identity response. Client hello. Again, one of the most important things in the client hello here is to show what protocols it supports. So you can see that this client supports over 86 Cipher Suites. And you can see all of the different suites that it does support. So if you have a situation where your clients are trying to connect and they don't, you can quickly just look at the client hello and see, does the client actually support the Cipher Suites that you're trying to connect with? All right, next we got the server hello, which is the yo, I'm legit point. Here in the server hello, you can see that the server has chosen which Cipher Suite's going to be used. And in this case, this is an older one. So this is RSA AES 128 with CBC or cipher block chaining or coding. SHA-1 for its message authentication code. And then you see it goes on down the line. So you see the certificate request, client key exchange, change cipher spec, success, and then the 4-way handshake. Okay? So there's an example of what a good one looks like. So let's go ahead and demonstrate how the server controls actually which cipher spec is used. We're going to do that here. All right. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and disassociate my client and then have it reassociate and see that it's going to ultimately choose a different cipher spec, and I'll go through why that happens that way. All right. Yep, I did it again. All right. It's always good to press start first, guys. All right, so you want to look at your server hello. The server hello, now we can see that the encryption mechanism changed. If you remember before, it was AES 128 CBC, SHA-1, and now it's AES 128 GCM SHA-256. The reason why that changed, I didn't do anything on the client. All I did was I changed my configuration file on my Radius server to reprioritize the cipher suites. So really quick, we can look at that. Okay. So here you can see the first configuration file I had. It says, I know it's confusing, so it has AES 128 SHA. That's what the cipher suite setting is for that first connection I made. And then in my second file, I just reversed the order and put the AES 128 GCM SHA-256 ahead of that. So now you can see that the server is actually choosing the cipher suite that is going to be used for that connection. So again, when you're configuring your devices, look at what cipher suites do you want to support, put them in the front. If you have to have legacy clients to support older cipher suites, move those to the back of the line, and you'll be able to get the items that you need. All right, so what about the new stuff? So let's look and see if this guy can do ECC. All right. All right, so we'll take this guy down. This time we'll start the capture. And away we go. Awesome. So again, we're going to go straight to the server hello. And sure enough, we can see that, again, by changing the cipher suite order and by prioritizing a stronger cipher, more modern, you can see that the devices are connecting and the server's choosing to use the newer, more modern cipher suite to go ahead and support this connection. All right, so what happens with EAP TLS? Again, you have a server certificate and you have a client certificate. So let's look what happens on the handshake when you actually break it. So let's make this bad client. Not going to do anything else. We'll start this. So what I just did is I basically put a bad certificate or a certificate that can't be recognized on the device. Okay, so we'll see what the handshake looks like after this completes. All right, we'll let this go through one more time here, but you see that it fails. Of course it fails because it can't find the cert. So after you do the identity request, identity response, the server and the client are going to negotiate which type of EAP authentication is going to be utilized. In this case, the server is saying we want to do EAP TLS, but the client can't do it because it's misconfigured. Okay? So you can quickly see in a packet capture, what is that, five frames there. You can quickly see that if you have a misconfigured client, you can see that very quickly in a packet capture. So I've got a couple more minutes here, so I want to show you one more thing that was mentioned earlier about sending the items in the clear. So how many of you guys had to troubleshoot EAP TLS? How about having to get the certificates, to check out the certificates and see if they're valid? You ever have problems getting those certs? All right. If you do, here's a little trick. Certificates are set in the clear, and you're collecting them using Wireshark. So, I did it right that time. All right, there we go. User error again. All right, so with this, because the certificates were are sent in the clear, and if you're trying to troubleshoot it and you're trying to authenticate that the certificate's right, whether it's the server certificate or the client certificate, fire up Wireshark or your trusty packet capture tool. Here I'm going to demonstrate Wireshark. So when we talked about the handshake, we know in the server hello, the server sends its certificate, and we know in the and it does a request to the client for its cert. So those certificates are actually sent. So let's check that out. So you've got certificate hello. Sure enough, you have something here in Wireshark, which is the certificate. What you can do very easily is go ahead, right-click on this guy, and say export packet bytes. And go ahead and save this. Now, this is going to be a binary file. I'm just going to change to all file types here just so I can put DER, but you could save it as a bin file. What I'm about to show you is going to work as well. All right, so we go ahead and we save that certificate. Now we're going to come over to a terminal where I saved it. And let's see what we can do with this. So just to show you that it is in binary, there you go. That's pretty useless. Can't do anything with that, right? All right, but we can go to our trusty friend, OpenSSL. 9, inform DR in WLPC, and sure enough, there's a certificate. If you want to see all the details of that certificate, you add two flags here. One's called the text flag, and you can do no out if you don't want to see this portion of the certificate in your output, and there you go. Now you have the ability to check out who signed this certificate, what are the validity dates, the start and the end, and what key algorithms were being used to ensure that you have client compatibility for your client and your server applications. All right, that's what I got, guys. Thank you.